All right, Mountaineer Nation, it is week 5, the preview show of our beloved West Virginia Mountaineers who come into Saturday's contest 2-2, hosting the Utah Utes who come in at 3-1 at Milan Puskar Stadium in Morgantown, West Virginia. A 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff on Fox if you're watching it on TV. It's also Hall of Fame weekend. West Virginia will be honoring the 1965 West Virginia football team that won the SoCon championship, finished 6-4 on the season with wins over Virginia Tech and Pitt in this game by wearing their commemorative uniforms with the baby blue involved into the uniform. Also, the 2000 Music City Bowl team, the last team coached by legendary head coach Don Nehlen, who finished the season with a bowl victory, will be honored in this game. ESPN betting odds, if you're caring what happens in Vegas, and can tell a narrative sometimes. This story, as we found out last week with the Kansas game. Utah opened as a 9.5-point favorite, and over the course of this week, I've been watching it every single day. Got as high as 13.5, back down as to this recording time Thursday night, down to 12.5. Over/under set at 47.5, and I feel like that's just about right. Unfortunately for us Mountaineer fans, the ESPN matchup predictor only gives West Virginia a 28% chance of winning, so higher than last week against Kansas, but still still low enough that just kind of makes you feel a little about this game going in. So the matchup history, I'm going to give you in tonight's show what's on the line for both teams. We're going to talk about, the impact of potentially weather, injuries that are mounting, playing a huge role in the narrative of this game, what to watch for when West Virginia has the ball, what to watch for when Utah has the ball, special teams breakdown, 3 keys to victory, and get you out on a prediction. So we have no time to spare. Matchup history, West Virginia is 0-2 all-time against Utah. West Virginia lost 32-6 to Utah in the 1964 Liberty Bowl, played in Atlantic City Convention Hall in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Interesting note, it was the first major bowl game ever to be played indoors and broadcast nationwide. And then a game more fans remember, for worse reasons, even than that, the 2017 Heart of Dallas Bowl, played in an ice storm with maybe the worst West Virginia quarterback of the last quarter century, Chris Chugunov. Remember, that game was without Will Grier. He'd injured, broken his finger, I think, on his throwing hand there in the Texas game at home. I know, being at that game. But man, West Virginia just wanted to get out of there as soon as freaking possible and end that miserable ending to that season. So what's on the line for both teams? Let's talk about the Utes first, who are now 0-1 to start out the season in conference play. Utah had the pleasure of playing with a Michael Vandervelde-led officiating crew in its game last week against Texas Tech. So it had a first quarter long touchdown pass to Jackson Benny called back because of an ineligible receiver downfield penalty. Other than that play, again, didn't count. Utah didn't get going offensively for 3.5 quarters at home in front of a nationally televised audience. It was really a slugfest, rock fight if you watch that game like I did before West Virginia kicked off into the early evening. They hosted last week, big noon kickoff on Fox Sports. They were going against a ferocious Texas Tech defense that really showed its teeth in that one. It was just a 13-10 lead for Texas Tech almost midway through the fourth quarter when the Red Raiders exploded for 21 unanswered points to win decisively 34-10, although Texas Tech head coach Joey McGuire did really run up the score with a touchdown pass play with just over a minute to go left in regulation. So really call it around a 27-10 game, somewhere in that range. But Texas Tech, they like to pour salt on the wound and spit on your face as you're walking out of the stadium. So Utah had 4 turnovers on the day, 2 interceptions by quarterback Devin Dampier and 2 fumbles, one by running back Wayshawn Parker, one by wide receiver Ryan Davis. Utah only had 263 yards of total offense, going 4 of 16 on 3rd and 4th downs, respectively. Just couldn't get anything going against a stout Red Raider defense. And Utah heads into a bye week next week before taking on Arizona State and hated rival BYU in consecutive weeks. So if they want to get back in the Big 12 championship game discussion, they have to do so by beating West Virginia on the road. So for the Mountaineers, 2-2, 0-1 now in conference play after a loss last week to Kansas. It was just a fruitless effort down there in Lawrence, losing 41-10, only producing 324 yards of total offense, and 95 of that came on one Jalen Henderson 11-play touchdown drive at the end of the third quarter. Now, 2 weeks ago, West Virginia was able to move past a loss in similar fashion, dismally to an Ohio team, and then parlayed that with an overtime victory over Pitt in the backyard brawl, despite being a home touchdown underdog. So hopefully with these 1965 alternate home uniforms, add some inspiration and motivation, something extra. Can West Virginia have a similar bounce back as 2 weeks ago and put together some offense? We're going to talk about that. If yes, and West Virginia wins, this would pay dividends toward getting to bowl eligibility and beyond. If no, West Virginia looks ahead to a short preparation week at BYU next Friday night, late night, which may be their toughest road trip of the entire season. I'll be going to that game in Tempe, Arizona, but man, playing on a Friday night, crazy raucous environment, 4,700 feet above sea level. Those wild Mormons, like that if you haven't been following my channel, or if you have, you know that like that game just kind of haunts me a little bit, I feel like. So it'd be really nice to get a home victory going into that stretch. So weather alert, been tracking this week. High of 75, but the chance of rains increased from 25 to 50%, and it says, according to the Weather Channel app, that it's going to be coming in the afternoon. So we might get rainy conditions, but still warm. Still love that, but that might play an impact on the game, and I don't know if that necessarily helps West Virginia with rain in this contest. Injuries, guys, I mean, I've been following West Virginia for a long time. I mean, not as long as some of the older generations out there, but I mean, to tell you, I can't recall a time where West Virginia has just been beat up so bad, specifically on one side of the ball. One side of the ball, the offense, specifically the running back department. I mean, look at this running back depth chart of what it's now relegated to. So Jaheim White done for the year because of that nasty, illegal, cheap tackle in the Ohio game that's cost him the rest of the season. Somebody didn't check on Jalen Knighton's academic eligibility before recruiting him out of the transfer portal. Still salty about that. You're going to hear that all season long from me. Ty Edwards, according to the initial Big 12 injury report, I know things changed there before kickoff of last Saturday, against Kansas, when it seemed as if he was a little more probable and then downgraded and out. Now he's still questionable. Still got that hip pointer. Had to ask ChatGPT like this. How long usually can a hip pointer last? Kind of depends upon the severity. If it was one that was medium, it was going to be 2 to 3 weeks. So we're right in that window. So it could be that they're trying to save him till after the bye week. But having not played much during games 1 and 2, he's going to miss half the season of his only season in Morgantown. It's all on his body, his choice. But, I mean, man, can you shoot him up with some cortisone or something and he can go out there and play? I don't know. That's just me talking there. Sincere Bowers at running back 4, doubtful with a concussion, took a big, ugly, nasty hit in that game last week against Kansas. Cannon Katzer has yet to play this season, injured in August camp, but he wasn't on the injury report. So does that mean he's going to be playing on Saturday? Maybe. So if all of those guys that I just mentioned are out, West Virginia is down to Clay Ash, who we've seen, and is not a running back 1. Nice change of pace back, does some nice things, can get you 60 yards and rushing and receiving like we saw against Pitt, but not a running back 1. Dior Hubbard, who you thought was coming into this season going to be somewhere in the ballpark around like the 3rd, maybe upwards of even 2 once we got the Knighton situation. It was going to be Jaheim White and Dior Hubbard back-to-back. But he's been a slow start to this season. And then Tyler Jacklich, who I like his running, even though he was against 2nd and 3rd stringers for Kansas late in the game last week, but then took a Division I hit, popped, and fumbled the ball. So, I don't know going against this Utah defense. So, not the best of options there in the running back room, down to the nitty-gritty. In the wide receiver room, it sounds like West Virginia may get Preston Fox back. which would really, really help West Virginia's second team, special teams first, then wide receiving core second. He's probable with those. It's an undisclosed injury, but you'd have to assume that it's concussions, that he's had to deal with that in the past. Took a big hit there late in the game in that Pitt game and never came back from it. So don't know if that's the case for Preston. Nico Marchiol at quarterback, we learned on Tuesday, flew home to Colorado, as the reports say, to see a foot specialist. Don't know what that means for bigger ramifications and don't want to speculate on it. So we'll find out more, come Saturday, than thinking, we could talk about it more into next week. But he's questionable according to the injury report. So if he's missed multiple days of practice, have to assume that we're getting another quarterback. Didn't see Max Brown on the injury list. He's also yet to play. Shoulder injury, hamstring injury. Sounds like he's going to be back. And then Jacob Barrick is now upgraded from out of last week. He was doubtful all week, now to questionable with an ankle injury. So hopefully, and you're going to need a guy like him because of West Utah's D-line I'll talk about. Landon Livingston at center, doubtful, got rolled up on, exited last week's game. Carson Lee came in. He's doubtful. Expect Lee to be back in there, I would feel like. And then Cooper Young, yet to play. Saw a picture, I think, on social media. He was like the Doritos or Nacho Player of the Week or something on the program. And he was in a boot on like a scooter, so have yet to see him. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Darian Lewis, undisclosed injury, probable. So all those injuries, except for Darian Lewis, all on the offensive side of the ball. Oh, for Utah, the only player really of note who's in the starting lineup or could see playing time was redshirt freshman backup hybrid tight end Hunter Andrews. He's already declared out for this game. 13 carries, 113 yards rushing with a touchdown, 10 catches for 65 yards receiving for the season for the Utes. So long list of injuries for West Virginia. Really just one, I feel like, of note for Utah. So what to watch for when the Utes have the ball? We're talking about the Utah offense against the West Virginia defense. West Virginia's defense at 21 points per game allowed for the season, 322 yards per game allowed. Utah, 33 points per game on average, 454 yards per game on average. 18th in the country in rushing per game, 243 yards per game. That was right around where West Virginia was 2 seasons ago. 2023, when they led all of the Power 4 in rushing, and they were right around that same note. So just think how good West Virginia was running the ball a few years ago. That's how good this Utah team is by the numbers. Now, they have Cal Poly. They had Wyoming, UCLA team that's already fired its head coach, and now Texas Tech. But, I was kind of expecting this, talked about it over the preseason. Draft prospects on their offensive line, Caleb Lomu at left tackle, Spencer Fano at right tackle, and then Jaron Kump at center. The trademark of the Kyle Whittingham program, and specifically his offense, has been physicality. They want to run the ball. They want to do it in creative ways. They're going to do it with their backs, their quarterbacks. So where I want to start with analyzing this Utah offense is its new quarterback, number 4, junior Devin Dampier. He's a transfer from New Mexico, along with Utah's new offensive coordinator, Jason Beck, who was previously the head coach at New Mexico. Now, Dampier completing 71% of his passes, but just for an average of 198 yards per game through the air with 7 touchdowns, and then those 2 picks that he threw last week against Texas Tech. He also adds 56 yards per game on the ground with 1 rushing touchdown to his credit this season. But he had arguably his toughest game as a Ute last week against the Red Raiders, just 162 yards on 25 completions. He's not throwing, when he did try and throw the ball deep, he was overthrowing receivers, got the two interceptions that we talked about. Just couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat, it seemed like. So 25 completions, 162 yards, and only 27 yards rushing on 11 carries. No touchdowns. That's not good enough. That's not going to beat. But again, you're playing against a team that's maybe top 15, top 10 in the country in Texas Tech. So want to give them a little bit of grace. They were at home, though. So it took 3.5 quarters. It was ugly. And I don't think what I thought going into last week about Devin Dampier. But he does add that second dimension that WVU's faced 3 times now in the season. A mobile quarterback will run the ball out of designed run plays for him. And while he's just 5'11", he's a stocky 210, and he can take and deliver hits, especially running laterally. Now, the two running backs that West Virginia's got to keep an eye on, number one, I'm going to talk about the more dangerous one, transfer from Washington State, sophomore running back, Wayshawn Parker. Did have a fumble last week against Texas Tech. On the season, 33 carries for a really respectable 6.5 yards per carry average and 3 touchdowns. Also has 70 yards receiving on just 4 catches and a receiving touchdown. Now, the team leader in carries is number 21 senior running back Nakari Parker. He's one of the transfers coming over with Dampier and Beck over to Utah from New Mexico, and I'll talk about his other receiver in a second. So Rogers, 46 carries, leads the team, 189 yards and 4 touchdowns. Another transfer from New Mexico, redshirt senior, number 9. He's a possession wide receiver, Ryan Davis. 29 catches, just 241 yards. It's only an 8.3 yards per yards per reception average and a touchdown. Did have a game high 10 catches for 70 yards last week against Texas Tech, but the guy I want to point out, West Virginia's really got to keep their eyes on. It always seems like Utah has a really good tight end, and that's senior number 88 Dallin Bentley. He's Utah's leader in receiving yardage. Just 17 catches on the season, but for 187 yards and 2 touchdowns. Top performer last week for the Utes, 6 catches, 75 yards with a long of 44 on the day. So if you're thinking about a few things, what to expect from West Virginia's defense against this Utah attack, I'm saying stop the run. Like when the 300 stopped the Persians on their advance at the Hell's Gates there, and they just slammed into their shield, stopped them where they were trying to advance, and then pushed them back. That's what West Virginia is going to have to do, I feel like, for 4 quarters, because Utah is going to want to use its strong, stout offensive line and maul West Virginia over. They're going to want to road grade. They're going to want to run outside. It sounds like from other podcasts I've heard, about 2/3 of the time they're trying to run outside rather than inside, and it makes sense that you have these awesome tackles. Go ahead and use them, just like West Virginia did last year with Wyatt Milam. So if West Virginia can keep Utah somehow, some way to around 150 yards rushing on the day, preferably under. So if it's rainy and wet too, I think that kind of favors Utah in this game. If that's how that they're going to want to try and play one-sided. West Virginia has to sell out on stopping Utah's designed run plays, especially with the quarterback in Dampier as well. No sacks, no turnovers last week against Kansas. That's been really the trademark of this West Virginia D through 3 games. Sacks, I feel like, may be hard to come by, given the heavy dose of the run by Utah and Dampier's mobility. His sack to pressure rate is just 10%. I heard this from Chris Anderson and Mike Kazaza on their podcast earlier today. So sack to pressure rate is this is a new stat. I really like this one. So you take the number of pressures that a quarterback has faced for the season, and then I think divide it by the number of sacks. So Nico Marchiol, unfortunately, but makes sense given the number of sacks that he's taken on his pressures, is somewhere around 80, in the 80th percentile. Dampier's only down at 10. So hasn't been pressured a lot, and when he has been pressured, he's not getting sacked, just like Jalen Daniels was last week. So with Utah turning the ball over 4 times last week, I feel like you still have to harass them just like Texas Tech did, but I don't think that West Virginia can afford to send more than 5 on the pass rush consistently, which is going to be incredibly difficult to do given Utah's offensive line. So why do you say that, Carson? Why do you say you only bring 5? Because Dampier has yet to show that he can complete the deep ball, and he's going to want to hit his checkdowns to the backs, to the tight ends, to these small possession wide receivers, these safety valves. So how do you beat that then? You got to lock down the receivers in coverage near the line of scrimmage. Use Reed Carrico and or Chase Wilson in a spy, and they will either need to make one-on-one tackles if Dampier takes off, or if he sits back behind the line of scrimmage and 4, 5, 6 seconds go by, then send the linebacker after him. So it's kind of almost a little bit of backyard football, somewhat in a way of like Johnny Manziel did, a dozen years ago. But that's the way you're going to have to defend it, I feel like, is There were, unfortunately, just some big plays, and that's what I want to talk about next. Big plays that really killed the Mountaineers last week against Kansas. That's just like you can't have if you want to win, especially against. I know West Virginia offense did not give West Virginia's defense anything to go off. No confidence, but you didn't get turnovers in that too to help out the offense in that regard. But complimentary football. We're trying to track this for the season. So, West Virginia tore up by the big play last week. 41-yard touchdown pass to Levi Wentz, 39-yard touchdown to LaShawn Williams, 62-yard rush touchdown by LaShawn Williams, the kickoff return touchdown by Emmanuel Henderson Jr. I know that was on special teams. We're talking defense here. And then the 28-yard rush by Jalen Daniels that set up a touchdown. So, and then, again, that was the consequence of West Virginia's defense being on the field way too long, playing without a lead, sometimes with a multi-score deficit, no turnovers forced, no confidence from the offense. So you're either going to have to catch those guys if that happens in this game against Utah on the big plays before they reach the end zone, and like they did to Pitt last 2 weeks ago, last time at home, hold them to field goals, or maybe you can only give up just one or two big plays for touchdowns in this game, because that's what I feel like you're going to have to play superior, awesome defense, just like you did in that backyard brawl to win. So when West Virginia has the ball, we're talking about the West Virginia O against the Utah D. West Virginia's offense down after 3 non-conference games, and then the first conference games just to 24 points per game, 408 yards per game on average. So you got offenses who kind of pad their stats and they look as good as they're going to possibly look for the season. And then as conference play comes in, that kind of whittles back down to the norm. So this is not good for West Virginia that these numbers are where they are as of right now. Thank God that what they did against RMU week 1. Utah's defense, 15 points per game allowed, 389 yards per game allowed. They have a base 4-3 defense with some 4-2-5 principles by defensive coordinator Morgan Scalley, and we know that Kyle Whittingham will have his hands on the defense as well. So who pops off the page to me from Utah? If you've listened to some other West Virginia podcasters out there, I'm just beating a dead horse at this point in time, but I watched that game against Texas Tech, and my goodness, number 90, redshirt sophomore defensive end John Henry Daly is incredible. He's in on every single freaking play, y'all. Nation's sack leader with 6, tied for second in FBS with 7.5 tackles for loss on the season. I don't know how West Virginia is going to block him with Logan Fano on the other side. I think maybe using Jacob Barrick if he's healthy, coming back to that point, or Ryan Ward to chip or bring him inside to block as well for this game. He's just a monster. Kind of reminds you, I feel like, of J.J. Watt out there. There's a lot of players I really like on this Utah defense that are just as good, I feel like, as Texas Tech. Number 6, redshirt senior, free safety, Nate Ritchie. Now he's the team's leader in tackles with 25 on the season after a 13 tackle, 2.5 tackle for loss performance last week against the Red Raiders. Lander Barton, number 8, he's a senior linebacker, but really can do it all. Also has some statistics on the offensive side of the ball. Equally as impressive, I feel like, in pass coverage as he is against stopping the run. Number 23, redshirt freshman nickel Jackson Benny, tied for second in the nation with 3 interceptions. He had one last week against Texas Tech where he just pulled what was going to be an obvious touchdown reception from, I think it was Reggie Virgil from Texas Tech. Also added 7 tackles and a tackles for loss in that contest. And also number 2, junior cornerback Smith Snowden. This kid's everywhere. If the ball gets to the second or third level, Snowden's going to be in on the play. You're going to hear his name, I feel like, a lot, or see him around the ball during this game. He's in on every play, plays defense, runs the ball, catches the ball, returns kickoffs. He's really a Swiss Army knife, it feels like, for this Utah team. So where do I want to start for the West Virginia offense is, are we getting, and this was the question I felt like I asked last week against Kansas, are we getting Jalen Henderson at quarterback? I think after that 79 yards rushing on 7 carries with a touchdown last week in the third quarter against Kansas, leading West Virginia to that 11-play, 95-yard touchdown drive, you got to go to him. He gave West Virginia the spark that it did not have for the entire night up until that point in time. And while his passing has been suspect so far this season, not, setting the world on fire by any stretch of the imagination, he also hasn't been getting first team reps in practice, y'all. So if he can get, I hope they've been in the indoor facility because it's been raining here. At least it has been just north of the border here in Washington for all freaking week. So I hope they've been in the indoor facility. I hope that he's been, trying to develop the rapport, work on his wide receivers, timing. Quarterback to wide receiver timing is incredibly important on all of his routes. Now, like I said earlier, Nico Marchiol returned home to Colorado on Tuesday to see a foot specialist, so he had to have missed some practice time this week. So that gives ample opportunities, I feel like, for Jalen Henderson, Khalil Wilkins, Scotty Fox, but I don't know if I trust those underclassmen rather than a fifth-year senior to take on this Utah team. He would add that quarterback run dimension to this offense that it so desperately needs behind this struggling offensive line, and it's possibly three, bottom running backs on the depth chart. You need to have some diversified attack within the ground game. Henderson gives you that. Whether or not, you think that Nico Marchiol is a better quarterback or not, is a moot point, I feel like, at this point in the argument. It's you do what's best for that given week at that given time to try and win ball games while the season's still just 4 games in, y'all. If we want to talk about what happens after the bye week, at the midpoint of the season, we can talk about that. But as of right now, you're still at home. You're still in the freaking month of September. You want to try and win this game. And who gives you the best opportunity to win? I think right now you got to try out Jalen Henderson. Kind of depends upon Ty Edwards' health. So I'm going to mention that later. But got to see this offense change some things up. I'm really critical, I feel like, even though, I talked about this in the preseason, maybe we only see phase 1, phase 2 of the Rich Rodriguez offense with so many new players this season and now with all of these injuries moved up. But I'm telling you, and I know, I don't want to bring back some PTSD for some West Virginia fans out here if I say the word bubble screen, but my goodness. Get the ball out of the backfield, use the pass as the extension of the run. I would just really, really love it if Jake Spavital was calling this offense. Use some screens, use some jet sweeps, use some quick routes over the middle. Where are those curls that we saw against Robert Morris? Where they just, Nico got out of his hand, chucked it over to Cam Vaughn on the sideline, and you let him go one-on-one with somebody. What I'll say, early on in the contest between Utah and Texas Tech, their running back Jacoby Williams was able to put together a 73-yard reception early on in the game simply because Williams had good speed. Utah missed a ton of tackles on the play, and Williams refused to go down. So I put the onus, if you can't put the onus on this offensive line and these running backs for the run game, can you not create some sort of offense by using the quick action pass game? Use some mesh concepts, some slants. Why is this offense? I feel like even going back years. You got to go all the way back to Jared Deggy for sure, and he wasn't even always so good at this. Why is this offense allergic to slants over the middle? I know for the reason why last year was because Garrett Green was too small to see over the offensive line and couldn't hit players on quick routes over the middle like that. But my goodness, Jalen Henderson should have no problem. Absolutely. Throw some slants, some quick slants, something like that. Or mesh. I know you got to get wide receivers or tight ends running across field like that, and they have been trying that to some degree to this point in the season. But man, I think I've seen that little RPO kind of roll out into the flat with the tight end only 5 yards in front of him play maybe a dozen times already through 3 games. Is there a little bit more? Is there something different that you can give, a different look? I just think that the play calling has been a bit predictable at times through 4 games. Do we finally see really phase 2 of this offense? And does it give it a different look simply if Henderson is in there compared to Marchiol? We'll see. I think you have to reward, as the offense, you have to reward the defense when it forces turnovers in this game, gets a big stop, and you get good field position, like what West Virginia did against Pitt a few weeks ago. We can't have what happened against Ohio, and then, of course, you get some stops as a defense West Virginia did last week against Kansas, and it was just, you were stuck in neutral. It was like you're spinning your wheels in mud. So what I have to say, I mean, I'm almost half hour in here now, and we all understand the reality. Excuse me. Come on, O-line. Come on. Let's do this here. We can't determine anything, I feel like, about the ability of the skill position players on this team without any time to throw and very little push up front. That was embarrassing last week. It was embarrassing 2 weeks ago against Ohio. Whatever you need to do to try and manifest that same kind of energy out there that you did against a freaking Kyle Lewis and Rasheem Biles-led front seven of Pitt, do that again against Utah at home. Now, I know Livingston's now hurt, but Livingston's now hurt and out for this game. Next man up here. These guys are all, so many of them. Walter Young-Bear, Tykees Crawford, now Carson Lee. You guys are fifth-year seniors. I know you haven't played a whole lot together, but come on. I know you're going against the Utah line now that's vicious, but this could get very, very freaking ugly. And that's the reason why there's so many freaking injuries. This is why I always live by the adage and the mantra that you have to build up your lines first, especially on offense. You have to build up your line. This is what I say about NFL teams all the time is I'd rather have a really good offensive line and then kind of figure it out with maybe less than elite talent at quarterback and wide receiver and running back than the other way around. So I can't even get a feel for anybody else on this team other than Ty Edwards and a little bit of Cam Vaughn. Grayson Barnes, Rodney Gallagher in that Pitt game. But if you're only going to give 2 seconds at most in pass coverage, and you're what's their yards per carry on rushing so far this season, but you can't create any sort of holes for anybody outside of Ty Edwards to muscle his way through them, then come on, offensive line, try somebody else, try some things different in the play calling, or it's time for a shorter leash. Now I know Rodriguez wouldn't probably have the guys out there if he didn't have better options, so I get it that you're playing with who you have out there, but We'll see what the offensive line does. So special teams, not much of note, not as juicy, I feel like, as the matchup was against Kansas last week. Cade Hensley now 4 for 5 on the season for field goals. Perfect 12 for 12 on extra points. He had a 26-yard, sorry about that. 26-yard field goal last week against Kansas with an extra point. On the opposite side for Utah, true freshman kicking for them, 3 for 6 on the season. This is Dylan Curtis, 18 for 19 on extra points. Was 1 for 1 with a 32-yard field goal last week against Texas Tech and an extra point. We got an Australian punting matchup, baby, 2 weeks in a row. I freaking love it. Ollie Straw, really good last week. 25 punts on the season, 43 yards per punt average, where he's kind of been consistently for his entire WVU career. 6 punts inside the 20, 5 over 50 yards, and now has a long on the season of 55. Really good, like I said last week against the Jayhawks, just struggled. What punt out kicking is coverage. That's what happened on that first Trey Nagy punt return that the Jayhawks were able to get a 30-yard return, set up short field around midfield, and they went up 7 early on in the contest. So, you got to understand those opportunities whenever you can boot it, and if you're going to do so, put it toward the sidelines. Don't give the returner any operation to room or, room to run. So we'll have to see how that goes for the Mountaineers in this game. With field position battle has not been favorable for West Virginia through 4 games, with so many, it feels like, drives starting out inside your own 25. And then for Utah, sophomore Orion Phillips, he's a good one so far for the Utes. 12 punts on the season, 44 yards per punt average, 5 inside the 20, 3 of 50 plus with a long of 58. Last week against the Red Raiders, 7 punts, 45 yard per punt average, 3 inside the 20, and that long of 58. So he could boot it. I know the air, altitude is a little bit different up there in Utah versus down where West Virginia will be, just about 400 feet above sea level. So we'll just have to see how these two guys punt in this one. Kickoff returns, I really welcome. Seriously, like, buy him a box of popsicles. Preston Fox back, because it seems as if just West Virginia and Rodney Gallagher has been relegated to calling fair catches since he exited late in that game against Pitt. Same with Andre Devine in kickoffs. Rodney was on punt a couple of weeks ago, and then Andre Devine in that backyard brawl and kickoff return. West Virginia got absolutely zero yards last week against the Jayhawks in return yardage. That's killer. That sucks. That's nothing. That third phase of the game, Kansas was able to take advantage of it. You didn't. You have to get some sort of return yardage. Come on. So, please, Preston Fox, hope you can play out there. You're our only hope. I feel like that these coaches trust in returning kicks and punts. So for Utah, it's been a combination of Smith Snowden, as I talked about already, and junior wide receiver Rashawn Glover. Not much to say on the kickoff return yards, just 3 returns for 32 yards combined on the season. For Utah, I'll start with him first. Glover's been really good in punt return yardage, so got to be able to field your coverage units. 5 returns, 15.4 yards per return average because of his 51-yard long return week 2 against Cal Poly. On the opposite side, as I said, it's Fox. 8 returns, 9.1 yards per return average with that long of 28 that he had week 1 against RMU. So my 3 keys to victory, I'll get you out with a prediction, and we'll move on from there. I will be at this game on Saturday, so really looking forward to it. If you see me, I gifted these tickets and a parking pass. Really thankful for this. Going to be parking in the blue lot. First time I feel like in my lifetime. Love it. Really, like I said, thankful. So hopefully to get there a few hours before kickoff. Do kind of have a work event earlier in the day on Saturday. So I have to be at that, so I won't be able to tailgate from the early morning till kickoff and stuff like that. But when I do get down there, if you see me, love to talk to you. Yeah, so give me a shout, or would love to say hello. And if you've liked this video so far, please like it so more Mountaineer fans can see it across YouTube, and love to have you a subscriber to my channel. Give you my 3 keys to victory prediction and get you out here. So offense, defense, special teams. I think we got to talk about all 3 of them if West Virginia is going to win this game. Offense. First and foremost for me is Ty Edwards going to play. I view a win pretty much improbable. I'm not going to say impossible, but pretty improbable without him. We've seen now what the Clay Ash RB1 experience is. And with this offensive line, I don't care if you have Jalen Henderson out there and he runs like Pat White. Like, you need to have a complementary running back alongside your quarterback. So if this offensive line can step up, if it can have Ty Edwards, I even feel comfortable with Nico Marchiol being back in there at quarterback. But Ty Edwards is the key. We saw how that changed the whole complexion of the feel and vibe for that Kansas game last week. If Ty Edwards played, I still feel pretty confident in that West Virginia, could have made it a more competitive. Maybe they might not have won, but if you had Ty Edwards there at running back, you can get something going offensively with your run game. Puts a little less pressure, I feel like, that, Nico Marchiol can make some plays, through the air, get something going, have a little bit more balance between offense and defense, not giving the ball so many possessions, so many plays, time of possession on the field for Kansas. Kansas doesn't ring up 34 offensively generated points. There's just a few plays here and there that I feel like that Kansas really took advantage of the West Virginia defense. And would they have been in that same position if West Virginia's freaking offense could put together some first downs and collect some points? I mean, you can tell I'm a little bit jaded and a little bit peeved, and this is about as agitated as you'll get from me, I feel like, on this season. Because, again, I understand it. There's a lot of moving parts, year 1. But I feel like this game is very important. I should have maybe said that earlier on, and what's on the line for this game is I feel like we have a bit of a 2021 situation going on here where West Virginia went 2-4 to start out the season, went into a bye, and then we're able to catch fire in the second half with some big wins against Iowa State, wins against Texas, I think I've said this once already before. Looking at the backstretch of the season, I don't know where you can find 4 wins. I mean, without something like this. here at BYU, and I think I've already alluded to how, I'm like, I'm not really feeling very confident about that game next week in Provo. So this one makes a little bit more sense, even though Utah might be better than BYU. Don't know yet, to be determined. So you need Ty Edwards to play at all freaking possible. Or you have to figure out something offensively to get the ball away from the line of scrimmage as quick as possible. So this is on Coach Rodriguez, Coach Larry Porter, Travis Trickett, the whole offensive brain trust out there. How can you put together offensive first downs? Defense, you got to match Utah's physicality, play for as long as you freaking can, feeding off the crowd, just like in the backyard brawl. Hopefully, Mountaineer Nation's loud, they're proud. They make it tough for Dampier to try and get anything going, speed him up, just like West Virginia did against Eli Holstein of Pitt a couple of weeks ago. And then he, force him into some turnovers or things that he, just mental mistakes, mental errors, even if that leads to, getting Utah off the field on third down. Prior to that really poor performance last week against Texas Tech, Utah's been really killing it on third down, one of the, best teams in the country. So West Virginia's defense can only do so much, I feel like. They can stand. They've stood on their head before that Kansas game, with getting sacks, getting turnovers. So can you do that at home against this Utah team? And then offense, can you pay it forward for your defense and score some points off it? And then special teams, you can't give up on the return game. That really kind of annoyed me last week against Kansas. There's hidden yardage to be had there. Like I said, even if you just get what are the return averages from Preston Fox and punt return, that's 10 more extra yards. That's one first down fewer that you need for a series, for a possession. And then on the kickoff returns, we saw how that completely just put the nail in the coffin, changed the game for the Jayhawks last week against West Virginia. Can you create some excitement, some energy? We all know how returns, if it's an interception or a punt return, and especially kickoff returns, can just get a team juiced. You need that shot in the arm. You haven't really had that since the end of the backyard brawl. So that would be really huge there. And then the coverage units. Not putting any blame. You're not going to hear any blame from me, at least, on Ethan Head. I know his one job is putting the ball into the end zone or beyond it. But if he's putting the ball inside the 5, get your coverage units over there to where the man is. Why were there so many guys on the other side of the field covering against Emmanuel Henderson last week of Kansas? And then the guys that did just got completely plowed. He just ran through, had better speed than everybody, one man to beat, and burned them. Like did the Usain Bolt Shrek at the very end. So coverage units, punt return, or, punt, can't give up a 30-yard punt return like Trey Nagy had last week in your punt coverage. So this is a lot of ifs. This is a lot of what ifs, or can West Virginia do this? Would West Virginia do this? Coulda, shoulda, woulda. I think it's going to be hard. I think it's really going to be hard against this Utah team, even though they're playing on the road. I think that kind of pissed them off, getting spat in their face by Texas Tech at the very end of that game last week. They want to take heads. They want to win this conference. They came in loud and proud into the Big 12. If this is secretly Kyle Whittingham's last head coaching season, or he's already, I think, announced a coach in waiting or something before last season or whatever. If he's trying to, finish this off on the right foot, these are the kinds of wins that he wants to try and, can have here. So I don't think Utah is going to lay down by any means. They're a tough out. West Virginia hasn't beat them in program history, only despite playing 2 times. They've really mirrored, alongside Oklahoma State. I did a breakdown, I think it was 2 years ago or so, looking at the future of the Big 12 conference with the new Pac-12 schools, added in, about how West Virginia, Oklahoma State, Utah, Kansas State was 4th, but how those programs really over the course of the last 25 years have been the, mainstays in college football, the most successful conference championships, BCS bowl wins, stuff like that. So Utah's no slouch. They're physical. They want to try and win just the same way that West Virginia does, running the ball, even though it looks a little bit different. It's more power than the traditional Rich Rodriguez speed, and they play awesome defense. They never give up. So I don't think we're going to expect that for 4 quarters at any point in time. So this is not going to be a blowout for West Virginia in any stretch of the imagination. If they're going to win, they're going to win close. In my preseason prediction, I picked Utah to win this game even after I picked West Virginia to go on a 4-0 stretch to start out the year. RMU, then Ohio, then Pitt, and then Kansas. It's 2-2. So I have yet to see anything from this West Virginia offense that tells me any which difference against Utah that they're going to score the kinds of points that I predicted. Even though last week, in my preseason prediction, I still picked them to score 20. Utah win 31-20. I'm thinking, and this all depends, I feel like, on if Ty Edwards plays. Ty Edwards' availability for this contest means everything for West Virginia. So if not, if a hip pointer is staying kind of true to the course of a medium, whatever you call it, not a mild, if it was a mild injury, he would be sure, cleared to play, good to go. So it kind of depends on how bad that hip pointer is. That would be the determination, I feel like, in the score. So as of right now, I'm going to say Utah 24, West Virginia 13. Kind of was floating with the idea of 17 points, but I go back to how hard fought Utah's defense was last week against Texas Tech. And man, does that offense have some firepower, even though they were playing with a second string quarterback but still was playing the best performance of his collegiate career last week. So I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I've been wrong twice on the season. I've been right twice on the season. So I hope I'm wrong in this game and that West Virginia comes out with a victory. So I'd absolutely love that. And again, would love to interact with you. Either here, you can do so on the comments. So leave me your feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. Or I'll see you in the blue lot and see you at Mountaineer Field on Saturday. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog that I do this each and every week and have a lot of fun doing it. And then whether West Virginia wins, loses, or ties, and that can't happen in college football, I'll be back on Sunday either to record for a video for Monday or record it Sunday for you to listen to Sunday to recap it. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. Hail West Virginia. Let's go and spot that ball, baby.